Okay. Testing, is it on? Okay, great. So I hope you all had a great lunch because we have more panels coming up this afternoon. We're one person short, so we had a couple people that couldn't make it today, but we're still gonna have a great panel. So I wanna talk about being a founder in angel investing right now. Okay. As Chris mentioned earlier, at Lofty, we're really passionate about making sure that pre-exit founders are angel investing. Reasons for that are, one, it helps you become a better investor once you exit and you're writing bigger checks, so you feel the confidence to get the reps in. Two, it helps you think like an investor and create a risk. So we have a great panel today with founders who have all angel invested. So I'll let them introduce themselves, just tell us about a company you founded, where you're at today, and when you started angel investing. So just go on.
Since I already have a mic in hand. Hi everybody, I'm Cheryl. I became a founder in 2020, so I was of the COVID vintage, you could say, and I made my first angel investment in 2022. My company was called IndieFit. It was a platform that helped independent fitness instructors build and scale their own digital fitness businesses. It was an amazing ride. However, what we did was very predicated on fitness going virtual and staying that way. And we did see a bit of a reversal to normal life, so to speak. So I had a great 2-year ride on my first company, ultimately shut it down. From there, I actually joined one of my investors in the first company as a late co-founder in a VR meditation game. That was a fun adventure, and a really cool thesis that was kind of focused on making meditation fun and introducing it to the masses. Something I strongly believe, so I'm always careful in never saying I was a founder past tense, is that I deeply believe once you are a founder for life. So I remain in the club, right? But present day, I'm not actively working on a startup of my own. I'm actually the head of sales and service for the US at OpenTable.
All right, I'm Luisa Castellanos. I'm the co-founder and COO of a company called Science on Call. We launched in 2020. Prior to that, I was an entrepreneur since age 11 in the arts. So I had an arts company and was selling pieces in art galleries, toy stores, Whole Foods, and so pretty much wanted to be an entrepreneur my whole life. And went to DePaul for entrepreneurship and marketing, and then in 2014 launched an IT consulting company with my current co-founder. So this is company number 2 with him. And we really connected with the Chicago community and met Chris and some other really great angels early on in our journey. And that's kind of how I learned about angel investing, was through connections that I've made and Lofty. So my first angel investment was, I think, in 2023 through a syndicate that Lofty hosted, and have made one other since then, a small one. And yeah, just really excited to share more about my experience.
Right, hey everyone, Nilay Parikh here. I'm the founder and CEO of Arvest, or Arvest.ai. We are headquartered in that building across the street, so it was a short commute today. At Arvest, we are building quality control and compliance AI solutions for warehousing and logistics companies using computer vision technology. So the idea is to use existing or low-cost infrastructure and give insights on inventory damage control in your warehouses. We are a 2.5-year-old-ish company. Chris was the first check in Arvest. It was not even called Arvest. We had a different name, different team. That's part of the angel investing journey, right? So, and yeah, with the platform that Lofty provided, I've made 3 or 4 angel investments in the last couple of years. So looking forward to sharing more.
Great, and you guys can keep that mic on there. So I want to start off with, how many investments have you made to date, if you didn't already share, and do you think it's making you a stronger founder?
So I have done 6. 5 were through syndicates. I just did my first direct. Woohoo! Scary, y'all. And yes, I absolutely think, I actually will say that I think both sides of your question are true. I think there's an extremely symbiotic relationship between being a founder and an investor in both directions, actually. So as a founder, you know, you eat, sleep, and breathe your company, that's the job. And I think once you take on the role of angel investor, even with baby checks, right, it sort of puts you on the other side of the table. So I feel like you gain a lot of perspective on like what it means to see the forest for the trees when you're evaluating a company that you are not inside of every day. So I feel like I gained a lot of perspective in that regard, but I think the inverse is true as well. Like I think I am a better investor because I was a founder. I actually understand the gig, right? So I think when you're angel investing and you've done it yourself, there's sort of a different level of ability to connect with founders and get to the heart of like the go-to-market, right? The day-to-day, because you have also been an operator yourself.
I've made 2 angel investments officially, I guess, through SPVs. A couple others through like WeFunder or Republic, if those count. But I think it does make me a better founder because I'm looking at the way that those companies are presenting themselves, and for me to be convinced, like, is that something I want to invest in? I have to look at like, you know, do I know the founder? Do I believe what they're building will be around in a few years? You know, is this a relevant idea? And do they have the metrics that I myself as a founder have gone out and presented to other investors? Because I've done that so many times, I feel like I have a better understanding of what the investor's looking for. So I think it works both ways. It makes me a better founder, but also a better investor that I've run a company. And I see that with other investors who are previous founders as well. Like we're part of the Long Jump portfolio, and all of those partners founded companies and are running companies. And so they're really great mentors for me as somebody who's gone and done both. So yeah, I think it's a important part of my experience.
Yeah, I'll echo that. Definitely an important part. I'm a first-time founder, right? So 2 years ago, when I started Arvest, was the first time jumping into the entrepreneurship side of things. So it was always on the corporate side of the world. So it's definitely a crash course in building a company. But as you start raising capital, the first time we went out to raise a pre-seed round, it took us 7 months and almost 160 conversations. We are just closing a seed round right now, and it took like 35 conversations, and we closed it out in like 2 months period, right? And it's not just the learning from the previous round, but also being on the other side. As an angel investor, it's like, okay, now what all do we need to prepare, right? Like when I'm looking at it from an SPV, I get details like, okay, they have a pitch deck, financial model, stuff like that, right? Like a list. What is good, what gives you clarity as an investor? That's how I want to prepare when I am presenting to my investors, right? So that's definitely a super helpful part of angel investing.
Great, and to follow up on that, have you developed a thesis yet, you feel? And if so, has it evolved? And anyone can answer, but.
I have not, no. Only thesis I have is so we are in warehousing and logistics, so that's not an industry that I really want to invest in, just because I want to learn about other worlds, right? It's a fun way to explore. You're so deep diving into your own industry every single day, but you don't know anything about like the restaurant tech or food tech or health tech. You know, when you get those kinds of opportunities, it's just more interesting in my world.
Yeah, I also don't really have a thesis, but I think that I am more excited by deals that I am slightly familiar with. And so I'm not experienced in healthcare or biotech or any of that stuff. So when I see a deal like that, I'm like, this is really overwhelming. I have no idea what any of this is. So I'll probably stay away from that. But anything in like consumers, because I have a background in restaurants and retail, that's exciting to me. I have like a better understanding of the people that product or service is supporting. And so if I feel like that's something that I can relate to in some way, I have some sort of connection to it.
I think my strategy is actually kind of bifurcated. So when it comes to investing through syndicates, which is what I have primarily done, I think it's actually a good idea not to have a thesis to a certain extent. It's like if you're just getting started, you're lucky to have deal flow. You're lucky when somebody like Chris Deutsch brings you deal flow, right? So I think in that lane, it's really good to stay open and opportunistic, right? And so when I look at deals through syndicates, all sorts of things could stand out, right? Great founder, problem solution fit, great terms, traction, etc. So I would say that's pretty open-ended. But as I have made the leap to making a first direct angel investment, I think about that very, very, very differently. So on that side, I think it's a lot more important to actually understand the space and the business that the founder is building for both sides, right? So I can properly evaluate and understand the company, but also so that I can be helpful. So for me, thesis, if I'm going direct, would be like some flavor of industries or business models that I've been exposed to in my career. So really interested in restaurant tech and food tech, two-sided marketplaces, SaaS, and specifically SaaS that has to be directly sold to a super fragmented, hard to chase customer. Like that's my jam as a VP of sales, love that. That's a small business. So I think about it kind of differently depending on the investment vehicle.
And fair. And you mentioned, direct investment syndicates, like would love to hear where you guys are sourcing your deals from. I'm sure there's a mix on the panel, and what that looks like today.
Yeah, I think getting started with syndicates is absolutely the way to go for a variety of reasons. The first is if you've never angel invested, you have a cold start problem, right? Deals are not landing in your lap. So when you align yourself with syndicates like Lofty Angels, it solves that problem. But I think that there's more benefits to it than just that. Like the second piece is as you are learning and honing your own judgment as an investor, it's really helpful to be able to follow the leader with somebody you trust. So I've done that both with Lofty Ventures as well as another one called Redbeard Ventures. They have a syndicate as well. And then I think the third piece of that as well is, especially if you are actively angel investing as a founder, you may not be flush with capital, right? So syndicates are really helpful in terms of the terms that they offer because you can write smaller checks and diversify yourself, which you should if you are angel investing.
Yeah, I think the super small check option is huge for founders who don't have a lot of capital to invest, and it's just a way to test the waters and not put all your eggs in one basket. And with the Lofty Angels and the founder opportunity, that was huge for me. Was yes, I could write a really small check in a founder that I actually know really well, who's also part of the portfolio that I've built that relationship with. But other deal flow that I've seen, I get emails from obviously Lofty, but Josephine Collective in Chicago is another great one. And they're doing a great job of sourcing companies that are coming to them. And a lot of times it is companies that I've heard of through my network. I go to a lot of events in Chicago, so I know a lot of founders personally and see them on panels, see the newsletters written about them. And so that's what gets me excited. And if I see that opportunity comes up somewhere, I'm really excited to consider investing.
I think I agree 100% as a founder. SPV syndicates are the way to go. It's definitely dipping your toes without getting wet kind of thing. The other thing is also, if you think about it from a founder's perspective, right? Like, why would they take money from someone they don't know, or if they're not at the top of their field, or if they're not going to add value, right? Like syndicate, they can trust. They know there's a trusted partner and there's a group of people. That's one way to get access to quality deal flow. Is just thinking from a founder's perspective that hey, even if you have 100,000 or 200,000 lying around, like what value does that person bring to me, right? But as a syndicate, it may be a different way that a founder thinks, like, hey, this is a good brand, the partner is someone I trust, things like that. So.
Okay, so it sounds like a lot of you are using syndicates. How much time do you think you're spending on these deals, like diligencing them? I know the syndicates usually help present that information to you in a great package, but with being a founder or equally in a high impact role like Cheryl, how do you make time for that? How much time do you spend, and do you think you should be spending more or less, just so people can get an idea of like, do I have the actual time, am I have the capital, but do I have the time to start angel investing?
Yeah, I can start. I think that's another big advantage of going with syndicates, right? Like that they do the diligence for you. They're not going to just present some random companies that they don't know to you in most cases. That's why it's important to partner with good people. But the idea that everything is laid out as you would want to see as an investor makes it easy. You're not going out and doing diligence of the market, or in most cases, when you're investing through a syndicate, you are not going to get the chance to talk to the founding team. You're not even allowed to, right? Reach out to the founder. So you just have to trust that the partner that you're choosing in the syndicate is the right one, and they are doing their due diligence with the founder, the team, the market size, and then presenting those deals to that group. Right, so definitely, to answer your question, not a lot of time, to be honest. Obviously going through all the material, making sure I understand the opportunity and things like that. Asking around in my network if the deal makes sense or not, but that's to the extent of diligence that I get.
Yeah, I would say I'm probably not spending very much time reviewing deals currently, but I think as I make this part of my financial future and planning, I do expect to spend a little bit more time focused on this as an investment strategy. And I would probably spend about the same amount of time as I would like considering, am I gonna put my money in a high yield savings account, a CD, money markets, whatever. And this is just part of that strategy. So if I'm looking at a deal, it's more the time I would spend just thinking about, is this something I want to put money in at all, a startup? Like, yes, I really like the founder, I really like the idea, but do I want to put this chunk of money here versus this other form of investment? And so it's not so much like reviewing the deal, because I know, like you said, that it's a trusted partner and they're putting the money from other angel investors into this pool. And so if other people are feeling passionate and excited about it, then it's probably a good investment versus one that I just found on my own.
Yeah, I would agree. It sounds like we're all really praising the gospel of syndicates. If that is your investment strategy, which is a great one, if you are a founder, I would say it requires less than an hour a month. And that's really the beauty, is like participate in a syndicate that is led by somebody you trust, because where the time investment really lies is in like getting the deal flow, right? Weeding out the ones that you should not move forward with. And the beauty of participating in a syndicate is that a lot of that work is done by somebody else, and you have the opportunity to just kind of follow their lead. So small time investment, which is helpful.
I think one other piece of the syndicate too is that like typically there is a carry to that investment, and so that is the work that the group has put together to find those companies, and so you're paying that to the investor who's leading the syndicate for the work that they've done, as opposed to doing it yourself.
Okay, and are there any downsides to being a founder and angel at the same time, or any other downsides you want to mention just so people feel prepared?
I mean, I'll say the elephant in the room, which is being a founder typically does not leave you super flush with capital. So I think that was sort of the main concern that I had when I got started. But what I'll say, and I think this is important, is if you are a founder, you have already chosen the most risky possible path in life, right? Like, you have chosen asymmetric risk. Maybe you're gonna shoot the moon, but there's a much higher chance, as I lived during COVID, that you will have to move on from your company, right? So I think if you have already chosen a path that risky, it is very, very important to diversify yourself. And it's not easy to do, right? Like, I had to make a lot of sacrifices. Fortunately for me, when I was building my company, it was COVID. So we were mostly, staying at home and Netflixing. There wasn't as much financial temptation as there is today. But I think it's really important to, give yourself that diversification when you're already doing something so risky. And that's something that I frequently reflect on, right? Like, I sunset my first company, but it was as a result of that company that I got connected to Chris, that I got connected to Lofty, that I made my first angel investment. And it's something that I, learned a lot from. All of those angel investments now remain active, even though my company does not, right? So you never know as a founder, learning and taking this opportunity to get involved in angel investing may really pay off, sometimes even longer than, your company is active.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to consider. Like, this is a very risky investment to make. Of all the investments you can make, you could put it in a savings account, you could put it in a CD, you could do any number of things with your money. But yeah, as a founder, we typically don't have a lot of extra cash laying around, and to choose between investing that in your own company, I think is a huge choice to make. Is like, do I want to keep investing my own money? And sometimes you see exited founders go and start another company and reinvest that money in their new company. But diversifying was a big thing for me, making sure that, if I'm gonna invest, I wanna put eggs in multiple baskets in that case. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you both nailed it. I think that's correct. You don't have a lot of money, and you're still putting money into someone else's company. So it is a risk that you're taking. But again, we are all in the risk-taking business anyway. So it's all right. One of the things I wanted to share was, if you guys have read the book Burn Rate by Andy Dunn, he like a local Chicago celebrity, he invested every single dollar he made from his the salary he was taking into other e-commerce or B2C kind of startups. Some of them turned out to be great, like Warby Parker's and a few other big brands that you see now, like Away was another one, the bag company, which is a great example, right? Like, he was not flush with cash, but he was taking that risk in terms of investing and got returns. There's no guarantee, but it's a good example to have.
Okay, any other advice you guys want to offer before I open up for questions?
I'll say two things. One is there's a quote I really like, which is the best time to get started was yesterday, and the second best time is today. So I really think it is one of those, like, if you are curious, take the step. The other thing I'll say is the way a lot of these syndicates work is a lot of them are powered by like the AngelList platform. You set up your login, you start receiving information in your email inbox. So even if you're not ready to actually deploy capital and take the leap, I think there's a lot of learning that comes even from being on the receiving end of the deal flow and just reading the memos on how the lead investor is thinking about it. So I think that even is a good step one, right? Like, just set up the login and start following and learning. And then the other thing I'll say is, if you're gonna get started, do more than one. I think that's the other big learning, right? Is like, just remembering that by definition, angel investing is about the riskiest form of investing you could engage in. So with that in mind, diversification is super important. That's part of the reason I think syndicates like Lofty's are so incredible, is they make it attainable at a very small check size. So if you have 10K to deploy all day, right? You can break that up, make 5 or 10 bets, don't make one based on the risk profile of going this early.
Yeah, that was another thing. I was like trying to remember what my other advice was definitely like making more than one. Probably should be making more than two, because at this rate,
more than 5.
Yeah, like the success rates of startups are pretty low, and so in order to find that one rocket ship, you've got to make multiple bets. But I think also like investing in a fund, if you do have that kind of capital, is another way to do that, because through that fund, they are going to invest in 5, 10, 15 companies. And so they're thinking of it the way you as an angel investor might want to think of it, is like, I've got to invest in 15 companies because one of those is likely to make it and be a fund returner. And so you as your own individual have to think, is this going to return my whole fund? Whether that's 10,000 or 50,000.
Yeah, one thing I can say is, again, talking about it from a founder perspective is, make investments, right? It doesn't have to be your entire net worth, but even 5 to 10% of your investments going into startups, into founders is great, right? Like, otherwise we don't have the right to complain that Midwest doesn't have capital, Midwest doesn't have startups, everything's on the West Coast. Well, because they have money over there, right? And people are investing in it. There's a lot of money over here too, and if people start investing in it, it creates like a flywheel effect. In essence, right? So I think it's just like, hey, get started with investment, even if it's a small amount. It really, really helps boost a lot of innovation in our community.
Absolutely. On that note, do we have any questions in the audience? Does anybody have any questions for this panel?
So my question is, what kind of level of information do you expect to get when you invest through a syndicate on the operations and progress of the company that's taken on your capital?
That's a really good question, because I am in the process of kind of figuring this out as a founder who's received investment from several syndicates. And we, as a company, send investor updates every single month. We never have missed a month in multiple years. So it's very important that we keep people up to date. But we have one newsletter for investors and one that's for Friends of Science, is what we call it. And so it's a slightly pared down set of information, like we're not sharing like our bank balance or some things like that. But I guess it kind of depends on the company and like what their level of comfort is. And once you get to raising multiple rounds of capital, you're like, okay, now I have 3 SPVs that invested in me, and now that through that there's like 50 people, and so it's a lot of information to be giving out to that many people. But I, as a founder, I understand that, and so when I invest as an angel, I know I'm not going to be getting every little detail. I'm not going to be asking questions to that founder because I know how annoying it is to get asked questions all the time from people who didn't invest a huge sum of money. They technically don't have major investor rights, as we've documented in our safes and in our investment docs. So yeah, it depends how much they've invested if they're considered that.
I don't have a lot to add. That's pretty spot on. Yeah, I think it's just one of those, like, know the trade-offs, right? Like, if you are investing through a syndicate, which it sounds like primarily all of us are, you're typically writing a small check size. You are typically leaning on the syndicate as like your lead and your indicator, having done the diligence for you, right? So you definitely get access to the stuff, which is great, right? You're able to click through decks, financials, memos, etc. But what you don't have is the ability to say, I want more, right? Like, I think you kind of have to view yourself as being you're an informed passenger, right? You're not the driver. And like Louisa said, I think if we're talking angel investing as a founder, you have a different level of like empathy and understanding, right? Of being on the other side. So I am definitely passive, obviously, at the check size that we're investing at on the other side.
Hey, my name is Zor. Nice to meet you. Sorry I was a little late. I was downloading some crazy stuff out there with poor Jamie. You had to hear all of it. But I want to ask you about Chris talked about like a problem founder fit. It made me think of angel problem fit. Just want to test a thesis here, and I'm curious your thoughts. So my thesis is that superintelligence is here. We just haven't fully accepted it. Society cannot understand exponential curves, so we're not ready at all across any vertical. And the only businesses that really matter 10 years from now, or maybe 3 years from now, or maybe 12 months from now, are businesses in every sector that are trying to prepare our species for that so that it's not calamitous, and that it's instead empowering. And I'm curious, as people who invest and build things, what do you think about that?
Microphone is up for grabs.
I guess I technically have an AI company, so I guess I could talk about it. And like, we just raised money too in a world where everybody's like, we only invest in AI companies and you need 90% margins and no humans can do anything. It's like, you do still need humans to do things. So our company, Science on Call, we're technically a tech support platform for restaurants. So people can text in a question and get an answer immediately based on information that we've trained our AI on. And so it's powered by humans. There are humans in the loop, and there are always going to be edge cases, and there's always going to be things that the AI gets wrong. And so we are very focused on how people work with the AI. And so I do consider that when I'm looking at companies that are using AI. I'm like, yeah, you have this really cool platform that just uses ChatGPT and like in a new, different way. And so I do find it difficult to invest because I don't know enough about it, and I'm not a technical founder, and I'm relying on the information that my team gives me. And when we went to go pitch investors, there was so much training that I needed to understand what we do, because I'm not an AI expert, I'm not a technical founder. And so I think if you're going out and investing, it's important to like do your research on that stuff. And you know, I read as much as I can. I'm subscribed to like 20 different newsletters, and every single day there's something new. And I'm just like, this could destroy every AI company that's out there. And so I'm a little bit hesitant personally to invest in other AI companies, but invest in my AI company. Because we're using humans in a super efficient way, and we're increasing margins in a way that like I'm very confident we'll be able to scale that human effort.
Yeah, well, I run an AI company, so I don't even have a good excuse to not answer that question properly. But if I understand your thesis correctly, right? A lot of AI companies will claim that hey, we're not replacing people, it's not gonna make jobs extinct, or in our field.
Clarify one thing.
Sure.
I'm not advocating that people should be replaced. I think we are the drivers of it, but we are at risk of it driving us if we don't fully empower our youth especially to handle it. But my point is we're not ready as a species for this to happen peacefully, and we're at great risk of calamity.
Right.
And so, anyway, just want to be clear. I'm not against humans, we're awesome.
Yeah, that makes it work here. We are in the same team, so
Fully respectful of listening.
how do you control that, right? So the question becomes a lot of times like, okay, do you just stop innovation? Do you regulate AI? In a lot of cases, there's no like real concrete answer to that. Whether someone asks us to like, hey, stop doing what you're doing because you're replacing warehouse workers or warehouse jobs. It's like, but there's no one who's doing that job, and we're making it more accurate, right? We always have a counter argument to that. And there's always a limit on like, hey, there's no regulations over here in AI on what we can do, what we can't do. So, and I don't think I'm qualified enough to speak to that. Like, hey, should we put regulations and compliance in place? Definitely guardrails, yes, it's needed. But regulations, do we stop innovation? If we are stopping innovation, are other countries are gonna stop it too? I don't think so, right? Over there, it is still a competition, even if we're all humans, right? So there's no real answer that I'm getting over here, but that's just my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have an awesome room full of some very experienced and some burgeoning angels. If you could put on your founder hats for a moment, what are some examples of what angels have done that have benefited you guys? And what are some examples of even syndicate angels, so angels that are investing through a syndicate? Do you have any examples of like, there was a syndicate member who did something for my company, or an angel? Just curious, because we're trying to plant seeds of like how people can think about not just writing checks, but all the other stuff.
Love that question. I think the single biggest thing that I will remain forever grateful for when I reflect on the angel investors that backed my company is angel investors that really understand that at that early stage, you are betting on the founder, not the company. Like, it's a really, really good feeling as a founder when you know that you're sitting across the table from an investor that sees you and believes in you. And I think I've had both sides of that experience. I've had angel investors that are, in a pitch call, like a little bit unrealistic in terms of the amount of like proof and validation and traction. I'm like, listen, I can't show you the proof. That's what this is, right? Like, here's what I believe about the world. Here's how I plan to build it. Would love to have you on that journey with me. And I really reflect back on, Chris included, right? Like the angels that spent more time in an initial meeting seeking to get to know me and to understand like my competencies, right? Like, can this founder take this thing to market? Are they gonna scale it and make it a success? So I think that's big and important to remember if you're angel investing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the believing in the founder piece of it. I think the best relationships we have with angel investors are the ones who are just there as humans to support us and be a friend or somebody to talk to and the fact that I can run into these folks at other events and they check in how I'm doing personally, you know, like that's so meaningful to a founder. Like you aren't always gonna get that from institutional investors. They're gonna be focused on the metrics and focused on what you're building. They're not always thinking about you as a person. And I also think that is important when you're looking to invest in a company. Is like, do I actually respect this human? Will I potentially invest in them in their next company? It's not always just about that one company. Do I believe in them and their ability to grow something?
Sure. Great example of an angel helping out Chris. Like I said, was the first investor in our company, but it's so important to get that first check in, right? Like when he said yes, he said like, hey, you can go ahead and use our logo, right? Like, and that makes a lot of difference when you send out the deck to the next few investors that, hey, someone has already committed. And as you guys know, most investors are followers, right? Like the first check is the hardest check to come by. And if you can make that, that's awesome. He made the introduction to Jeff, who's sitting here. He also invested, right? And that like small check got like snowballed into almost like 10x the size, right? Just because of that one investment. So getting that ball rolling off the ground for founders is a very critical role that angels play.
Yeah, I had a question for Cheryl. So you did the single without an SPV. I had a question on like what kind of due diligence you did on the idea and the founder, and then also on the terms, on like if you were getting a fair cap and a fair discount.
I will admit my situation was incredibly unique because I actually invested in somebody who invested in me. So there was an opportunity. I have a relationship still with somebody who angel invested in my company. They have now started a project, which let me tell you is like the coolest full circle. Like that is why building relationships and like when you are in the founder chapter, that's why I so encourage like try angel investing, you know, like I look back and I'm like, there's a lot I learned from actually operating my company, but there are so many other, you know, things that live on in my life today that are just a result of like being a founder and being in that space and with the type of people that it attracts. So admittedly, like I still actually feel like an amateur in terms of like the first time I do go fully direct, which I am seeking to do within the next year. It's intimidating, right? When you take the leap from syndicate to direct, but I'm definitely pulling on, this is another reason that I think like founders should angel invest. I'm pulling on my memories from the other side of the table. It's like I do have a data set, right? I raised money for IndieFit and I remember those conversations. I remember what was asked of me, and that's a really good arsenal to pull from so that I can, you know, ask those same questions of others.
I wanted to react to the prior question about advice for angels, because we had, in my company, we had an event a couple weeks ago, and I have this philosophy that I want investors around the company who are going to help me build accountability structures that are aligned with what we're trying to do. So we had this event, there were probably 70 people there, and it was, it wasn't totally focused on investing, but there was an opportunity for me to talk about what we're doing and whatever, and I had a handful of current investors there. And a week after the event, a couple who have invested 6 figures in the company sent me a page, one page of bullet points that were constructive. Like what I could do, it was critical but constructive. What they thought we could do better to take advantage of that situation and actionable. And so it was like, it was awesome because it wasn't like, oh, you sucked or whatever. It was like, we love this, here's what we would suggest you could do better, and here's how. And if you want to practice in advance the next time, let's do that. And so, you know, one of the things I would say to angels is, how do you put yourself in the mindset and shoes of the entrepreneur in a way that you can help them achieve what they want to achieve?
Any other questions or? Okay, well, round of applause for the panel, please.